heart to learning, open up my heart to love. Help me to know myself and how I should learn. I open up to learning, I open up to joy. Help me to learn a language and let it be my happiness.
Hello everyone and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today we're going to go through a news story about an asylum seeker. Unfortunately for him, this asylum seeker ended up in prison. A few days ago, the prison authority released him. He tried to protest, saying there was some mistake, that he wasn't due to be released, and the prison threw him out, saying, no, it's you, go. They gave him £70. They directed him to the train station around the corner. He didn't have a mobile phone, and of course, after he left, he headed for London, which is what I think all of us would do in that situation. They tried to find him. He didn't have any technology. Nobody knew where he was. So this started a really big manhunt to find him. The thing I find most disturbing about this story is the language they've used to describe him. Let's first of all look at a quick summary of what happened over the last few days. Right, and here is the story. So let's go straight to it and start reading. This man here, you can see the picture of him. His name is Hadush Kebatu. Okay, I'll just move that up a bit. There we are. And reading from the top there, Hadush Kebatu from Ethiopia arrives in the UK on a small boat, having travelled through Sudan, Libya, Italy and France. On the 7th of July, Kebatu makes sexually explicit remarks to a 14-year-old who was eating a pizza with her friend in Epping Town Centre. On the 8th of July, he sexually assaults a woman trying to kiss her. He does the same to the girl he sexually assaulted the day before, who he encounters by chance. The woman, when seeing Kebatu with the girl, calls 999, our emergency number, and he's arrested overnight. Okay, so 10th of July, he denies charges of sexual assault. His trial is in August, as you can see there. 27th of August, the asylum seeker, this is Mr. Kebatu, denies the offences, telling the trial, "I'm not a wild animal." Okay. On the 4th of September, Kebatu is found guilty, and the story continues all the way up to here. He's sentenced to 12 months in prison and ordered to sign the sex offenders register. That means that people will know where he is. It's a way of deciding whether you want to live in a particular neighborhood. He's also told he's facing deportation. Then a few days ago, on the 24th of October, he's accidentally released from Chelmsford prison instead of being sent to an immigration detention centre. And there was a huge manhunt for him, and he was eventually caught on the 26th of October. Now, I want you to pay attention here to these words that he's used. He's saying, look, I'm not a wild animal, okay? And I would agree with him. He has done some really awful things, but he's not a wild animal. Okay, so just keep that in your mind, because we're going to go over now to another report. Right, now this time we are over at the Guardian's newspaper. Let me just go to the top here so you can see it. There he is. It says here, Epping sex offender back in custody after being released from prison in error. Now, I have a few issues with this because of the way they've portrayed him. That's called framing. And that's when they want you to pick up some details so that you can judge him in a particular way. It is true, I mean, he was a criminal, he was a sex offender, but the way this story is worded does indeed make him sound like a wild animal. So let's just have a little look. It says here, a former asylum seeker and convicted sex offender who was released from prison in error is back in custody and now faces deportation. So you can argue, well, this is just a fact. But if you put this together with the comments from our government, who described him as, well, I'm not going to repeat their words, but you could say that they described him as the worst person imaginable. It is true that he assaulted a woman and a 14-year-old girl, and that he was in prison. He has been rearrested, but there was a major manhunt to find him. Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, has said that he will now be deported. Well, he was going to be deported anyway. That's what was supposed to happen to him. He wasn't supposed to be released. And the secretary in charge of the UK for the government said that the deportation would happen as quickly as possible. I'm assuming that they wanted to paint a rather negative picture of him to detract from the mistake that they'd made in releasing him. I mean, they have said here, we must make sure this doesn't happen again. We have ordered an investigation to establish what went wrong. Now, if we just read through bits of this, this is the Met Police in London saying that this has been a diligent and fast-paced investigation. His picture has been posted all over the media, and they put adverts on TV telling him the best thing to do was to give himself up to the police. However, when they asked this man to leave prison, he didn't have a telephone, he had £70, and he didn't even know where he was going. Let's just read a little bit about his release. Okay, so if we go down here, lots of comments from all kinds of people saying how shocked they were. But this is basically what happened. Okay, so Kibatu, who was released wearing a prison-issue grey tracksuit holding a plastic bag containing his possessions, made several train journeys across London after being freed on Friday, according to the police. If we move a little bit further down there, you'll see it says, the 41-year-old was meant to be sent to an immigration detention centre to be deported, but was released from His Majesty's prison, Chelmsford in Essex, by mistake. A delivery driver described seeing Kibatu return to HMP Chelmsford in a very confused state 4 or 5 times, only to be turned away by prison staff and directed to the railway station. The driver, named only as Sim, told Sky News he saw Kibatu coming out of the prison saying, "Where am I going? What am I doing?" and hanging around for about an hour and a half as he tried to find out where he should be going. He said Kibatu knew he should be deported, but the prison staff were basically sending him away and saying to him, "Go, you've been released, go." The driver said that Kabatu was just scratching his head. Well, where do I go? Where do I go? The fourth or fifth time he went back to reception, he was starting to get upset. He was stressed. And this driver is saying, I'm not sticking up for the guy. That means I'm not defending him. To stick up for someone is to defend them. But in my eyes, he was trying to do the right thing. He knew he was getting deported, but he didn't know where he was going or how he should get there. Kibatu was then spotted later in Chelmsford asking for assistance. He took a train to London and then he travelled around London. Prison services sources say the release from Chelmsford was caused by human error. The prison officer who authorised the release has been removed from duties while an urgent investigation takes place. One prison source described the incident as a disaster waiting to happen because of the high volume of releases being processed by inexperienced staff and dozens of prisoners serving different jail tariffs here, being released at the same time. And there's lots of criticism pointing at the governments. But really, what I want to get at here is how they've framed this man, because they've really painted a very negative picture of him based on his previous criminal records, which is absolutely fine. No one can deny he did do some bad things, but he was let out in error. He was confused. He didn't know where he was going, and he's been described in different ways across the media. Now we're going to look at the original report that came out after he was released. Okay, so we won't read all of it. Let's just go through different bits of this. Justice Secretary David Lammy, this is the man on behalf of the government, said he was appalled and livid, which means very angry, on behalf of the public, that Kibatu is at large. At large means he's out and about. It goes on to say here that Lamy has said, let's be clear, Kibatu committed a nasty sexual assault involving a young child and a woman. That young child was a 14-year-old girl. And he said, and for those reasons, this of course is very serious. He added he's asked for a full and immediate investigation into his release. And then the Prime Minister chimed in that Kibatu must be caught and deported for his crimes. The police then go on to say public protection is our top priority, and we have launched an investigation into this incident. Okay, and it continues. Just more information about his original trial. There he is again. So they obviously are painting pictures of who he is, or rather, the crimes that have been committed. This is utterly unacceptable, has potentially put my constituents in danger, says somebody else. And then underneath that, another person has said, this man has only just been convicted, a level of incompetence that beggars belief. That just means unbelievable. Now, there's a few things I want to say about this, so let me just switch off this page so you can see. Right, so I want to put forward the idea that this man is being framed in a particular way in order that people will become angry. They've highlighted the fact that he was an asylum seeker. They've shown his crimes. Now, I'm in no way defending him. But I think that the government really are highlighting his crimes to detract from the idea that they must take responsibility for this. He left prison with £70, with no cell phone, looking very confused. Over the weekend, there's been a number of public announcements and photos going around to identify him. Now, it looks like he didn't even know that they wanted to see him. He tried to go back to the prison a few times. He was turned away. He went to London. We don't know where he was staying, but it certainly looks like he was sleeping rough. He was seen by a member of the public, and they called the police this morning, Sunday, and he was rearrested without any problem. He hadn't, uh, he didn't fight with anyone saying he should be rearrested. He clearly just didn't know what was happening. Now, I've heard different words on the media to describe him from various people, including politicians, describing him as being evil, wicked, the worst man to walk on the face of the earth, terrible crimes that he's committed. And this problem is something which comes up from time to time, and that is we tend to look to morality to judge people rather than the law. Evil. What does that even mean? That's not a legal term. It might be a good description based upon what he's done. It might even be accurate. But it seems to me that this story is framed in a particular way. Number one, to make people angry about immigration. Number two, to make people angry at the government. And number three, to really reduce the character of this man down to his crimes. Now, no one can argue that he has done some really bad things, okay? I'm not defending him in any way, but what I am saying is that if you let him out and it's a mistake, you must put your hand up and say, we let him out, it's a mistake, and also give him the support that he needs. This guy is an asylum seeker who's traveled through many countries to get to the UK. He's incredibly vulnerable. They just kicked him out of prison, told him to go somewhere else. In my eyes, he's a bit of a victim there. I don't know about his mental health, but even at his court case, he said, look, just deport me. I've had enough, I'm not a wild animal. Kick me out. And that was supposed to happen in the first place. So to make a big headline now saying, well, we'll deport him, that was the arrangement. Nothing's changed. But yeah, I'm just really worried that his face and name has appeared all over the media, and he's now going to be an excuse or a reason for the government or whoever to look once again at our immigration laws. On the same weekend that someone in Paris, as I understand it, was also attacked by what's been described as a young Egyptian male. So you see what's happening here. These are framed in a particular way to make people angry at our government's approach to immigration and asylum. And by making people angry, there's more of a chance that the government might try to push through its idea of identity cards and people who have a right to work here. But I think there's a bigger problem, and let me tell you what I think it is. Immigrants who come here tell me the same thing again and again. And they're coming to me for English lessons, but I'm hearing this all the time. And that is, I've no British friends. How do I make friends with British people? Everyone asks me that. And to be honest with you, if we are forcing immigrants out of mainstream society to live in ghettos, which is what it sounds like when I hear people saying, I have no British friends, where do I go? How do I integrate into society? It raises a bigger question about the British mind. How do we deal with British people? And I say we because I have to be honest, I have no British friends either. All my friends are from other places. And that's probably because I'm not prepared to go to the pub and sit and drink. I have far more interesting hobbies. So you see, this is a rather complex problem that opens up a big issue that the government, I don't think, is ready to address. And that is, are we all happily living next door to each other? I don't think we are. I mean, for me, I'll talk to anyone and I'll try the food of any particular group that comes to live in the UK. But because I've lived in so many countries, I don't feel particularly British either. So I can relate well to people who tell me that they just don't fit. And there's many people like me around, not just immigrants. There's people who, during the 1990s, when we were all in the EU, have gone and lived in other countries. They've came back and they've said, you know what? I don't fit here anymore. There's people I know from England who've moved to Scotland who are saying, what do we do? There's nothing here except fields. Remember, there's more people in the city of London than the entire population of Scotland. There's some very big questions to be answered about the way we live and also how open we are. Now, I'm not saying that British people are unhelpful or unsociable, but we're all getting older, and I'm not sure that older people can be as welcoming as younger people when it comes to things like immigration. You know what it's like when you get older? You want a quiet life. There's some big issues here. Also, where are immigrants living and how do they get along and mix amongst themselves? Is there really a majority here in the UK? And how would we describe that? What is it that we're all wanting to be part of? Is it really a division between white people and people from the Arab world, maybe? I don't know, but it raises much bigger questions than just this man being released from prison. It's about how we deal with people and how we think about people as well. From my opinion, I welcome asylum and immigration. I want Britain to be as diverse as possible. A beautiful big rainbow, a tapestry of colour. I would love that because that's just the way I am. Well, I know some people don't agree with that. So framing this man and making him the center of the immigration debate, I think, is a problem. And there we are. Right, that's it from me. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and let's talk again soon. See you. Bye.